And we move to the next actually speaker, who is Mr. Jeremy Adamson. And it is my great privilege to introduce Mr. Jeremy Adamson, a distinguished leader at the forefront of AI and analytics strategy. His extensive experience spans diverse sectors, including aviation, energy, financial services, retail, and public administration. And well, Jeremy's expertise lie in shaping actually organization's strategic direction in the realm of AI and analytics. He has collaborated with major entities, helping them establish leadership positions and unlock tangible business value through an advanced analytics. At Stilo Auto Group, Jeremy holds the pivotal role of Vice President of Business. His insights drive data-driven decision-making, optimizing business processes and outcomes. Jeremy's commitment extends to academia as an instructor to corporate strategy at the University of New Brunswick. He imparts knowledge to future business leaders. His passion for bridging theory and practice enriches the learning experience. Jeremy's literary contributions include two impactful books, Minding the Machines and Geeks with Empathy. Through these works, he explores the intersection of technology, empathy, and human experience. Please join me in welcoming Jeremy.
Hey, good morning. Thanks for the invitation. Am I coming through? Okay. Perfect.
Thank
I'll
you.
share my screen. There we go. And my screen's coming through okay as well?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. Perfect. Thank you again for the organizers and for the invitation to speak. It's always great to get together with fellow practitioners, and always excited about any opportunity to speak about human factors in AI. And I think a lot of what I'm going to talk about intersects nicely with what Max was presenting as well, just from a slightly different angle and with more of a I'd say North American focus. The introduction was great and perhaps overly generous, so I won't belabor the point, except to say that my social media information is on the slide here. I've got my website as well. Absolutely love talking about this stuff, so feel free to follow me on there and reach out anytime if you have any ideas to discuss or anything at all. It would be an absolute privilege to collaborate with anybody. Also need to call out, again, Geeks with Empathy just released, and that is where a lot of this material is coming from. So I think we as practitioners, we talk an awful lot about who does what, and we have a bit of a mental map that this person is a data analyst because they work with this tool set, they provide this output. This person is a data engineer, they work in DBT, they move data around, they do modeling. An architect does this, a data scientist does this, and there's all sorts of these Venn diagrams like I've got up top here, where we try to build those boundaries between who does what and the grand operating model for how data science, analytics, AI, and generative AI contribute to a business. I think that all of these, though, take a very technology-first approach to explaining what we do. And at the end of the day, what I would say we do, what our contribution is to these organizations that we serve, is that we help people to make decisions. And if at the end of the day, we haven't helped someone make a decision, whether it's quicker, whether it's more accurate, if we're not supporting the people and the functions within our organizations and with our clients, we really haven't done anything. We've implemented technology, we move data around, but if we're not supporting the business, really, we haven't contributed. And there's overwhelming optimism for what data science, traditional AI, generative AI is able to do. I reference this Deloitte study quite often, where executives that were surveyed said that it was going to fundamentally change their organizations. We haven't been remarkably successful, though. The most common number people throw around is 85% of analytics and AI projects end in failure. That came from a 2017 study by Gartner. There's been a lot of other ones more recently, Tech Republic, Capgemini. The most generous one is Fast Company, and they said that about 50% of these AI projects end in failure. So even if we take that most generous one of a 50% fail rate, that would be completely inexcusable in any other industry. But it's something that we tolerate and the organizations we work with tolerate. And what's worse is if we ask technology practitioners for their assessment on this, we get vastly different statistics. A person in the technology practice will often say, I integrated this data set. I moved this data from A to B, and I did exactly what I was told. I'm perfectly blameless in this. And that goes back to that difference in how we explain and articulate our value proposition for organizations. So if our organizations expect us to help them with decision making, and by those metrics, they find us to be lacking, but we say our role is to write code, our role is to move data around. That's why we have such a disparity in our articulation of success and our evaluation of what we do in these organizations. And throughout my career, I've never seen a project fall down based on the technology. It's always come down to strategy, process, and people. And unless you have all four of those, you're not going to have value creation through analytics or through AI. They all need to work together, and we need to take a more holistic view of what we're doing in our organizations. So if you take that as the backdrop for traditional AI or analytics, or whatever you want to call it, up until about 18 months ago, that was really, at least in my career, what I was up against was helping organizations with this huge failure rate. 18 months ago, of course, big shot in the arm was generative AI. And like Max said, quickest adoption in human history of a new technology. Every graph you look at for interest in this technology is just a hockey stick curve. Things have been nuts for the last 18 months. And for the first time in my career, it's been the executives that are pushing for adoption. So as a consultant, I don't need to shop around for work very much. Everybody is pushing for this. And investors and boards are demanding that companies participate in this. There's a lot of really interesting studies out there around hype in this. And I think that one of the most telling ones was done by Wall Street Zen, where they looked at transcriptions of earnings calls for publicly traded companies in North America in the first half of 2023. And they looked at how many times AI was mentioned in these calls and what happened to the share price as a result. And a lot of them are what you would expect. You look at NVIDIA, top of the list here, 1 hour phone call, they mentioned AI 150 times. So every 30 seconds. Kind of stands to reason there, because these guys are, building the hardware that supports this generative AI revolution. But if you scroll a little further down the list, there's some really interesting ones. Sherwin-Williams is a paint and home improvement company. They're talking about using AI to create popular paint colors and what have you. Whatever else. AI was mentioned about once a second by this company. You go further down that list, Lamb Weston, the biggest maker of French fries in the US, and Hershey's, chocolate bar company. They're talking about AI almost as much as NVIDIA. So you can say with some confidence that we are at a point of inflated expectations here. McKinsey study says that this is about a $3 trillion industry, and that might be right, but that value is almost certainly going to accrue to NVIDIA and OpenAI and Google. It's not going to fall to paint companies and French fry and chocolate bar companies. So we need to be cautious, I would say, in how we approach these. We're also seeing that growth has slowed across really all of these platforms, but looking at ChatGPT in particular, since it was the first one out there, huge growth, went from, almost 600% growth from November to April, but that growth slowed pretty quickly, and usership and stickiness slowed as well. You can see the time spent on the website went from 9 minutes at its peak to 7 minutes in August. So a significant decline in the amount of time that's spent on the platform. And if we, take what they're saying is that there's a lot more alternatives out there. We can look at a cross-industry study by Sequoia Capital, where they were just looking at retention and daily active users. And, same thing. If you look at daily active users, someone on WhatsApp, 85% likely to be on there every day, whereas ChatGPT, that drops down to 14%. So where there's use cases, certainly people are on there every day, but for the general public, these AI first companies aren't nearly as sticky as digital incumbents. So that is where we're at today, I would say, as an industry, is there's certainly immense potential with generative AI. With just applications that are available right now, we can improve coding, automate marketing, content generation. There's so many amazing things we can do with it. But we as practitioners need to try to realize the maximum benefit of the technology across its lifespan, and then not just pursue quick wins and what's interesting at the expense of what's valuable. That's complicated by the fact that executives really don't understand the technology. They don't understand the limitations. And the public, the people that are pushing executives to pursue these goals, alternate wildly between being excited about it one day and apprehensive about it the next. So it's up to us, again, as practitioners, to really manage executive and public expectations and talk about what it's actually capable of doing. But all of this is complicated by the fact that most of us are technology oriented. We like the technology more than what it can do for our organization. So again, we see our role as implementing technology more than helping people make decisions. So we always needed to, but now more than ever, orient ourselves to being in a support mindset and supporting our companies and our organizations rather than just technological abstractions. So for the rest, I just want to talk about some concrete things we could do to support that. And the first is to really separate what's cool from what's valuable. And Max just brought up this exact same chart, so I won't belabor the point, but just to highlight that, again, in 2023, generative AI was at the absolute tip of inflated expectations. And I'm seeing this, in my personal work. A lot of people feel comfortable reaching out to me over social media and talking about ideas and use cases and business opportunities in generative AI. A lot of them are pretty wild. They are enthusiastic, I would say, but there's not a good business opportunity there. And if you sit with them and logically try to work through what this person is trying to do, what the business case is, you can discredit them pretty quickly. Some of the ones that people reached out to me about were, a life coach, parenting advice, right off the top. That's some pretty high stakes stuff that you don't want to trust ChatGPT to be helping you out with. One of the other ones more interesting was recommending a neighborhood in a new city, and it's something that you can test yourself pretty easily, opening up any one of these LLMs. Because of course they're trained on publicly accessible news articles. You're going to get mostly news articles about gentrifying neighborhoods. Gentrifying neighborhoods is, of course, a polite euphemism for dangerous neighborhoods. So if you try this out with any neighborhood that I've lived in, any city I've lived in, it recommends the most dangerous neighborhood because there's so many articles about these up and coming neighborhoods that are historically crime ridden. So just something like that. You can imagine from business perspective, they're anticipating someone pays $2. They're a digital nomad. They're moving quite often. What does this offer that a quick Google doesn't offer? Nothing really. A person could check Reddit. A person could consult with colleagues. There isn't a business opportunity here. And again, if we exclude the actual application, if we just look at it from a complete moat and defensibility perspective, all of these are thin applications that are just built on an existing model. It's an API call to ChatGPT. So if you think of, the iPhone launch, one of the first apps on the Apple Store, what was that one that you pay your $2 and you hit a button and it turns on the flash on the back of the phone? Certainly a great idea, a very good use case, but there's no defensible business moat there. And with the next version of iOS, that was part of the core functionality. Nothing that you build with an API call to ChatGPT is going to be defensible. Anybody can undercut that unless you have some sort of value add on top of that. So a lot of these people, again, they're harvesting while the sun's out, and you can't blame them, but there's no defensibility. Gartner did another great study, which I really enjoy, where they looked at the different metrics, the different measures of success between AI mature companies and legacy organizations that aren't so mature in how they're deploying traditional AI. And what they saw was really quite interesting. For mature companies, they are linking their success around generative AI to customer success, cost efficiency. So very tight, crispy operational metrics, whereas the Lamb Westons, the Sherwin-Williams, these less mature organizations are trying to reorient their business around generative AI and to be AI first chocolate bars, AI first French fries. And if you consider who's been successful in data and analytics traditionally, those are the ones that are moving slow. They're using commercial off-the-shelf products. They are picking those low-hanging fruit and waiting to see how things play out before they double down and look for these transformative opportunities. So we could definitely learn a lot from them in how we advise our clients and our employers. So putting that together, the commercial application of all of these generative AI projects, if they're not aligned to existing business metrics, if they don't line up to our core competencies and how these businesses make money and measure success, if they don't contribute to this, to improved revenue, reduce cost, managing risk, they're not going to stand up to scrutiny by our stakeholders. So we, as practitioners, always need to be focused on value. And we always need to be putting people first. We, as practitioners, I find we are great technological determinists. We look at everything in terms of the technology, and we forget about the emotionality that goes into a lot of these. And I think a really interesting thought experiment on that is the difference in understanding the history of even our own practice between practitioners and between people that are in sociology and history and the history of science. One of the more interesting ones is how we explain away these AI winters that have come up throughout our the history of our practice. Late 70s and early 80s was that first AI winter. And if you ask a practitioner, what brought back interest and investment and research in this, they'll say, well, it was back propagation, it was neural networks. But if you look at what was happening, socially around that time, everybody was excited about the future, but a little fearful as well. In the movie theaters, there was Blade Runner, Star Wars, Alien, and in the terms of the geopolitical context, it was the peak of the Cold War. Ronald Reagan was talking about space-based lasers shooting nuclear missiles out of space. Like, that was pretty wild stuff at the time. So certainly neural networks were important, but the culture of the time, the zeitgeist, was one of nervous anticipation for the future. And the same thing in the late 90s. If you ask a practitioner, they would say, well, the cost of hard drives came down, advancements in ML and efficiency gains and what have you, and certainly that contributed. But what was happening socially? Tamagotchi. Everybody had a Tamagotchi in their pocket. AI had 1-inch chess and Furby and Roomba. It was, again, a time of nervous anticipation of the future. And we're in the same position now where the future is a little scary, but a little exciting. If you look in the news, some days, they're talking about post-scarcity society. Some days they're talking about Skynet, and it's going to take all of our jobs and enslave us. So we're, wildly oscillating back and forth between the public perception of this And it's not enough for us just to look at the technology and understand the technology. We need to, again, expand our aperture and our lens and understand the way that society is looking at our practice and to be prepared to defend that when our stakeholders and our clients question us about it. So with that and understanding the emotionality surrounding all of this, we can't just attack projects in terms of if it's something we can do, if it's technically feasible. We need to be, sitting with our stakeholders and walking through things around accountability and risk and ethics and public relations. In terms of accountability, even understanding how sensitive this is to cultural shifts. In the US, for example, we have great polarization between Republicans and Democrats. Each one is about 49% of the total population. If any one of those political parties were to say, we are the party that no longer supports AI. We think this is a danger to society. And if you are Lamb Weston or you're Hershey's and you've put a AI stamp on every chocolate bar or French fry you've got out there, all of a sudden you've lost 49% of your customer base. So you need to understand, again, the sensitivity of your culture and the different geographies you serve before you overextend in this new area. Public relations is another one. We have vicarious exposure to our underlying LLMs. If we decide to go with Gemini, there's a bias in that. If undergirding all of whatever API calls we do to support our customers or what have you, if that is coming from Gemini, we know from that embarrassing debacle about a month ago with the way they were misrepresenting history, we know that there is bias put in there. Well-intentioned bias, but bias nonetheless. And that is going to carry through into whatever products and service offerings we have built on top of it. If we go a different way and we platform on Grok, of course, we're going to have a different set of biases in there. So we need to be aware of this beyond just how strong the model is and how expedient. We need to know what the bias in that is so that we can advise people in our communications and PR teams. And we need to know that the roulette ball hasn't fully landed. We don't know what regulations are going to look like in this at the end of the day. I'm based out of Canada, and that's where I'm most familiar. The European Union has a lot more guidance on this, but in Canada, it's really a scary time to overextend. We have something called Bill C-27 and a companion document called the AIDA, and it provides almost no guidance on what regulations are going to look like at the end of the day. It just says that there's going to be, once this passes, an incoming AI minister who's going to monitor company compliance and order audits. And there's no guidance on what compliance looks like, what the audits are going to look like, what types of records we need to keep, anything at all. But it does say that there's going to be criminal prohibitions for the reckless use of AI. And again, no explanation on what constitutes the reckless use of AI. So it's like we're out there as civil engineers and we are building buildings and we don't know exactly what the building codes are like, but we know in 5 years there's going to be a building inspector that comes along, and if our setbacks aren't right, if we don't have enough doors or windows or any number of things, we could face criminal charges for the reckless construction of a building. That's absolutely terrifying from a business perspective, and for a Canadian organization, of course, you can imagine trying to plant your flag anywhere in this ecosystem is scary. If you find yourself on the wrong side of what our federal government in the end determines is legal, you will either need to backtrack or discontinue products or any number of things. So we need to be very cautious again in how we advise our organizations and always make sure that we are being conservative in how we roll these out. So again, to put it together, it's a very fluid environment, very prone to emotionality in how these are perceived and in how they're regulated. So we should always be taking a human-centric approach and protect ourselves against reputational damage, because we don't know exactly how this is going to look a year from now. Thinking even 18 months ago, this didn't exist. We don't know what the next 18 months are going to look like. So we need to be cautious. And if in doubt, make sure that we are, again, looking for ways to support our customers and the public. If we are using generative AI to elevate people, to increase their dignity and their role as customers in our worlds, it's likely we're going to end up on the right side of things. But if we're trying to increase profitability at their expense, we might find that we are on the wrong side of where that line ends up being. So to put it all together, see, I'm coming up on time. Again, we're at a point of very irrational exuberance, and we need to manage the expectations of our stakeholders and to choose projects that have a very clear value proposition and align with the objectives of our organizations. We don't need to restructure our businesses around this. It's a scary time, and we need to be conservative. The regulatory environment is fluid. And whatever we do, we need to be involving our stakeholders at every step and advising caution. There's a lot of value to be had here, business value to our customers. We just need to make sure that we're coming into it with eyes open. Until we know what that final environment looks like, until we know which LLM is going to end up on top and what other changes are going to happen in this industry, there's so many low-hanging fruit with commercial off-the-shelf products that we can, really help advance our organizations even using those. We just need to, swallow our pride a little bit. We don't all need to make our own foundational models. There's a lot that can be done with off-the-shelf products. And until then, use this opportunity to get our houses in order. Most of us, we can't reconcile our financial statements because our data is in such poor quality. We probably can't be building our own foundational model. So we use this time again, put in place good data governance programs, get your house in order, get a good, structure among your analytics practice and your AI practice. And then when the dust settles and we know what the ecosystem looks like, we'll be able to move a lot more quickly. So that's my time again. I absolutely love talking about this stuff. I've got my website and my social media accounts there. Please do feel free to reach out. And if this is a topic of interest, Geeks with Empathy came out about a month ago and is available on Amazon. So thanks again to the organizers. And I think we've got a couple minutes for questions anyway. Or if there's none, I guess we can hand it off to the next speaker. Again, appreciate the invitation and everybody's attention. Have a great rest of the conference.